Yes, autumn is here. Hello and welcome wherever you are. Here in the UK, the weather has turned and you can definitely now sense that autumn is coming. Even though you may see behind me through the window that the sun is peeking through, overall it's getting darker earlier. It got much colder. We've had loads of rain. There will be rain tomorrow. There will be rain the day after, and I'm excited because all of that means more guilt-free reading time. And there's something about autumn that makes me want to be more deliberate about choosing which books to read during this very special season. The last TBR video I did was in January, so I don't tend to film TBR videos, but I'm making an exception today. Partly because my list is a little bit different than your typical list, and that's because I don't really read fantasy or horror or even dark academia, which seems to be very popular in autumn book recommendations. Let me show you how I approach my autumn TBR. So first of all, with autumn, I want to make sure that one of the books I'm reading has a meditative aspect to it, just because autumn lends itself to more reflection. And as it happens, in the library recently, I came across this book, which is Stone Yard Devotional by Charlotte Wood. Charlotte Wood is a very well-known Australian writer, and I did come across her other book, The Weekend, the other day in bookstore, and I loved the first couple of paragraphs that I managed to read. Unfortunately, I couldn't see that book in the library, but I saw this one even better because from the synopsis, it seems to me this will be perfect to read in autumn. So the main protagonist here is a middle-aged woman who has a very successful professional life in Sydney, but she leaves it all behind and goes to live in a convent. So she obviously is experiencing some kind of spiritual turmoil, but we don't know what caused it. And the writing in here is supposed to be very intimate, with some commentary on grief and forgiveness as well. Last year I read a very similar book, even though it was a non-fiction. It was called Hamnet, and I'm saying similar because the main protagonist, also a woman, leaves her city life behind to live on this rural English island, and it's that theme of solitude as a path to a recovery of a heart that I think will make this a perfect autumn read. Let me know if you've read this already and what you thought of it. Another category that is a must-have for me during autumn is historical fiction. Now, I love historical fiction at any time of the year, but there's something about autumn that makes me want to lose myself in a world of kings and queens, and I'm hoping this book will satisfy me in that sense. So this is Harda by Elzbieta Cherezinska. This is a Polish novel, but there is an English translation. It is titled The Widow Queen. I talked about this book before because this has been on my TBR since January. I am finally tackling this now because I have a real itch now for this book. I just need to finish a couple of other books, and I have already put this by my bedside table as the next novel to read. Elzbieta Cherezinska is a very well-known, very well-respected author in Poland. She wrote many other books as well. She is always sold out. I haven't read anything by her yet, and I am so excited. Also, the English translation, if you look it up on Amazon or any other website, you will see it has really good reviews. So this is set in medieval Europe, and the main character here is the sister of the real Polish king, very much forgotten by the history, who married King of Sweden, and after his death she became the Queen of Sweden. This is all about her shaping her own destiny in the world ruled by men, but also shaping the European political landscape in the world world ruled by men. Now, if for whatever reason you can't get hold of this book, although I think it is widely available, another book that is very high on my TBR, also historical fiction, also about a forgotten figure, is Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell, where we've got William Shakespeare's wife as the main protagonist. Now, I was reminded about that book because I watched another video recommending autumn books by a YouTuber who is not a booktuber, but I really loved her recommendations. I will link that video below, all of her recommendations are literary fiction, so do check it out. And I have been hunting for Hamnet in my local charity stores, but I haven't found it yet, so I'll keep looking. If not, I'll probably get it from the library and I'll read it in 2026. Now, this next author I have put on my list because Tristan from the channel called Tristan and the Classics said that this author should be very much read in autumn, and you know, whatever Tristan says goes, right? Again, I'll link his video below if you haven't seen it yet. It's a great one as always. The author I am talking about is Joseph Conrad, and I have two of his books, one from a library which is Heart of Darkness, and another one I picked up from a charity store quite recently, which is The Secret Agent. So this year I read Joseph Conrad's short story titled The Tale. This was back in April, and I did talk about it in my April reading wrap-up. There's something about his writing that is just so dark. It's beautiful and very minimalistic, but gorgeous, and also very dark. Now that we in autumn, I feel myself getting into the right mood to read Joseph Conrad. I also read, during my school years, I read Lord Jim, but I haven't read neither of these two books. And I really do want to read more Conrad because he is a fascinating figure to me. He was a Polish writer who didn't learn English until he's 20s. I think when he moved to England he was 21, and he wrote all his books in beautiful English prose. And the reason why I'm so fascinated by it, because I also didn't learn English until my 20s. I came to England when I was 18, 19, and for many years I always thought about this, me not being a native English speaker, as a huge barrier to doing lots of things, including setting up this YouTube channel. And you know, it's not until you read about people like that, like Joseph Conrad, that inspire you to forget all these inhibitions and have a go at something, even though you don't feel like you necessarily qualify. So yes, definitely Joseph Conrad is on my autumn TBR. And the next category is, of course, a mystery or psychological thriller. And with this one, I'm going to rely on my mother-in-law's recommendation, because she told me that one of the best books she read this year was The Maid by Nita. Prose. Very well-known book. I haven't read it yet. Apparently this is focused on mystery, and so I guess it's a little bit on the lighter side than your traditional psychological thriller, and the focus is on whodunit. The main protagonist, who is a maid in a hotel where a murder happens, is supposed to be very likable, so I'm looking forward to reading that. I'll need to borrow it from my library as well. And then another one I saw recently in a bookstore, which I had no idea that it came out, is The Woman in Suite 11. I read The Woman in Cabin 10 some years back. I remember reading it on the beach, again recommended by my mother-in-law, and reading it very fast. I think I read it in 1 or 2 days because there were some fantastic twists in there. It's probably not any kind of challenging type of read, but it's perfect for reading just before bed, where you want to relax and you don't want to read anything that maybe requires a bit more intellectual effort. And also I have heard that they have made a movie based on that book with Keira Knightley, so I think I might give the other book, The Woman in Suite 11, a go as well. If you've been watching this channel, you know that I'm not a huge fan of short stories collection. I much prefer to dive deeper into a novel form of a book. However, from time to time, I do like to make an exception, especially if I have short snippets of time where I just want to read something from start to finish. So for this category, I have Madame Zero by Sarah Hall, which is a collection of short stories, which I didn't know it was a collection of short stories. Basically, I bought this book because it was on a shelf of books to buy in a local library. This cost me £1, and I recognized the name of the author because earlier this year I read The Wolf Border by Sarah Hall, which I really loved, and I am definitely going to be reading more novels by Sarah Hall. But this is a collection of short stories, and I love Sarah Hall's writing. I know writing will not disappoint me, whether it's a short story or a novel. From reading the short description on the back, I can tell you that these stories will definitely be dark, unsettled and haunting. In fact, Sunday Times used the phrase of shape-shifting tales. I love that. And the the quote in the beginning of the book, I'm not going to read you the whole blurb. Ooh! A bookmark just fell out of this book, which must have been sitting there for a while. Don't you just love when you buy a used book and you find something inside, maybe a postcard or a letter or an inscription? Oh, I love reading those. Anyway, I've got a lovely bookmark here. Where was I? Oh yes, so I'm not going to read you the whole blurb at the back. Instead, I want to read you the quote in the beginning of the book, which says, "The more clearly one sees this world, the more one is obliged to pretend it does not exist." Okay, and my final category is non-fiction. I have been really bad this year when it comes to non-fiction. I have not read much non-fiction, despite having a solid TBR that I set out for myself in the beginning of this year. What can I say? I was just more drawn to fiction this year, but I do want to read at least one or maybe two non-fiction books before the end of the year, and I think autumn is a good time to do it. So I have a couple of contenders here. The first one is A Story of a Heart, which won this year's non-fiction award for Women's Prize. I think I might do that one on Audible because I listened to a sample and it is narrated by the author, who to me it seems like she's doing a fantastic job of it. I do think I need to get ready for a bit of a crying time with that one. And then the other one is How to Think Like a Woman, which was mentioned by an Australian booktuber that I watch. I forgot the name of the channel, but I will link it below. There's something about Australian booktubers, just so great, aren't they? And entertaining to watch. So this is a blend of memoir and biography and philosophy, because the author is a female philosopher and she tells the story of 17th and 18th century female philosophers, but through that she also weaves into her own story and actually how not easy it is to be a female modern philosopher in the world that is dominated by men, because I never actually thought about it too much, but I personally don't know any women philosophers. Do you? And one more non-fiction book that I have is 84 Charing Cross Road, which I have mentioned in my previous videos that this will definitely be on my autumn TBR, because this is written in a form of letters, and I have recently read this fiction novel, The Guernsey Literary and Potato Peel Pie Society, which is also written in a form of letters, and I loved it. There's something about reading letters or writing letters that lends itself to autumn season just so well. And I used to love writing letters. I wrote a lot of letters to lots of my girlfriends in my teenage years, even to some school friends whom I would see the next day. I remember we were just writing each other letters all the time, and we would post them. So often we would see each other in between receiving the letters and writing the letters, but it was the excitement of receiving the letter, also the pure pleasure of writing a letter. And I'm talking about handwritten letters. I'm not talking about emails. I hope this is something that is not going to die out, and maybe one of my resolutions for next year will be to write more letters. They just feel somehow more personal, and it's actually quite therapeutic, the writing process in itself. Don't you agree? Anyway, so this is non-fiction. This is set post WW2. We've got an American writer who starts a correspondence with this owner of bookshop in London. That correspondence starts with her just simply looking for a specific book, but becomes something more. And for 20 years they are exchanging these letters. I can totally see myself reading this with a nice glass of red wine in my hand. I'd love to say a fireplace going, but I don't have a fireplace in my house. Maybe I'll put a fireplace on TV for this experience. I am very, very excited about this one. One category I haven't mentioned, which I think it's an absolute must for autumn, is a good old saga. Now, the reason why I haven't put it on my personal TBR is because I am reading a massive historical saga, which is War and Peace. And also there is another saga that I started reading in August, which I am absolutely loving, but I don't want to be talking about it here because I want to tell you all about it during my September reading wrap-up once I finished it. And actually, it reminded me just how much I love reading big sagas, whether they're historical sagas or not. Let me know if you have any recommendations for me. And on that note, I'm going to wrap up this video. As always, thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching my videos, for commenting, for subscribing. I am so happy that I have this community and I am so grateful for it. And I hope you have some exciting books on your autumn TBR, which please, please, please do share with me in the comments below. Thank you very much, and I'll see you as always next Friday.